Hi, I'm Benjamin and I ask for money. A lot of what I do costs a lot of money to do, and it isn't an obvious request. So I've spent a lot of my life getting rejected. I say, hey, Bob, can you give me $1 million? Bob says, no. I say, thank you for taking care of yourself, and I move on and I do it again. Because someone might say yes. The thing is, when I ask for money, I think through a lot of stuff before I do it, because I really don't like rejection. I'd rather spend 20 or 30 or 40 hours getting ready to talk to Bob than cold call the 300 Bobs that exist. It's a lot more fun to approach Bob from an educated perspective. So a lot of this is about how you build empathy for who your target is for the money. Now we're going to be going through a lot of different money pitches. This is you could use these slides for asking for an investment, for asking your boss to pay for a capital upgrade, for asking for your partner to approve you buying a new truck, for asking for money for scholarships, which is something I now have to do. I have to raise about $1 million a year to keep this program going at this point, which is a lot of work. You can use this model for just about anything. And we're going to talk to you about how to ask for money. Ben, you want to add anything before I flip on?
This is a really small, condensed, quick 1-hour version of a lot of stuff we really get into in BRIMM 104, where we teach about presenting things, where we teach about asking for things. Today, we're only going to lightly touch on it, and we're not going to make you all do your own presentation as we would in 104. But we go through these basic topics: who your targets, what you're asking for, how you set up the pitch, how you make sure you have the relevant stories to capture people's imagination and pull them in to maximize your chance of getting what you are asking for. We'll go through some of the other issues around that too and see where we get to in an hour. It should be fun.
And a lot of this is hedging everything like a bet, which we're going to talk about. But let's move on. So, first off, who are you targeting for money? The person comes first before the money. Behind every checkbook, there is a human. If you don't know their education level, if you don't know where they came from, if you don't know the vernacular that they use in their culture, what stories you think they're going to relate to, and what common points of contact. If I came into Portland, Oregon, where I live, which is probably the most left-wing place in the world, and asked for money like I asked for it in the mining industry, I would probably get tarred and feathered and thrown out of any environment I was in. You have to match the audience, and you have to know the person, not the company, not the organization. You have to understand the person you're dealing with. Now, in the age of LinkedIn, in the age of social media, you can find a lot about people. And it's not a problem to go and look at their Facebook when it's public, look at their Twitter, look at their Instagram, look at whatever you can find. Because building an understanding of who that person is makes a big difference. If the support a candidate you don't like for politics, maybe you don't want to deal with them. But if you do want to deal with them, you certainly don't want to mention the other guy, whoever the other guy is, because you've just triggered them, and probably not in a good way. So, who are you speaking for? I can speak for University of British Columbia. I can speak for a new startup I'm working for. I can speak for Benjamin Cox. I can speak for my research team. I can speak for BRIMM. I can speak for the program I teach. Some of those times I use I, some of those times I use we. Whenever I use you, it's really uncomfortable. You need to do your homework. No one likes that. I did that today. It went very badly. I really care about you, and how can we get your homework done? See the difference? We got to focus from that perspective. Now,
on the last point, people do have their pronouns. Do your homework on the person. But if you're not sure, err on the side of caution. Try not to cause offense by accident.
Yeah. And they, them, sometimes in mining are not modern pronouns. And the problem with our industry is about 10 years behind. So you can really get into trouble with pronouns. Now, let us be very clear. 9 out of 10 times you're asking for money, the person who signs the check is not in the room. So what's the risk type? How much money you're looking for? What is the goal? What are you going to give for that money. They are not giving you money, they're buying an outcome. So what is the range of outcomes that you have in mind? What stage of an ask are you at? Are we at a building relationship? Are we at we're looking for a definitive contract? Are we at an MOU? Where are you on the money ask perspective? And then finally, how do you want to get the money in the door? Do you want a capital investment? Do you want a prepayment? Do you want a capital sale? Do you want a grant? Do you want your spouse to approve a car? What is the thing you are asking for? If you can't answer these questions, odds are you're going to call Bob up and Bob's going to say, not my problem. Bye. This is not hard work. This is the pre-work. Do you want anything here, Ben?
I was going to use the analogy for stages. Think of it as dating, getting engaged, getting married. You know people at different levels. And at each stage of the process, generally, you're not going to ask just once and get what you need. You're going to have to jump through a few hoops. You're going to have to date a few times, get to know them, and then get your final picture.
Someone a long time ago said there's an average of 15 decision makers at an organization before a decision is made. How do you sell all 15 of them? We're going to talk about that. How do you sell across that space? So let's talk about font sizes. Let's talk about decks. In this day and age, in the age of TED Talks, people are supposed to do these very lovely abstract decks. And they work in the age of TED Talks. The problem is our industry is 20 years behind that. So in our industry, you have to create a deck that can travel on its own, i.e., the person you're giving it to, hi, Judy, I'm going to create a deck so you can sell the WIM for me. That deck has to be able to be used by Judy versus just by me. It can't be on its own. It can't travel with Benjamin. It has to travel on its own. Pablo has to create a deck, and Pablo did a lot of these decks that can be used by me, Judy, Ben, or even, I'm going to pick Ryan. I don't know Ryan's last name, never met him, or Wendy. Someone else really used the deck. Does that make sense? Second thing, the average person in our industry is over 50. They have bad eyes. Don't go below 24-point font. Don't go for 70 slides. Yeah, I mean, yeah, 80 flow charts at 8-point fonts. Isn't that lovely? Gets up there and you're like, really? Are you doing this to me?
But you see it. I'm sure you all see it in presentations, whether externally or internally in your company. Someone will pull out the 12-point or the 8-point, and there'll be words and words and words and words. And then they'll actually go through the indignity of reading every word that's on that slide in 12-point, which is handy if you're a 50-plus-year-old man with failing eyesight, but it's not really an efficient means of communication.
Especially since you have about 8 minutes to make a sale.
Yeah.
So by the time you're on page 3, you are gone. Now, you can have supplemental slides. You can have 20 slides to answer other questions if people have them, but your core story has to be 12 slides. Now, let's be very clear. We buy from people, not from organizations. So personal stories are a key. Hi, I'm Benjamin. I have a heater that's failing right now, that failed right now because my tenants turned off the heat in the middle of an ice storm, quite literally, and destroyed 7. I have 7 different leaks in one furnace room. That's water-based. Don't ask. I can tell that story all day, and people can emotionally know how frustrating that is. Now, don't tell a story unless it ties into your ask. Don't talk about your kid's soccer game unless your kid's soccer game is going to get you paid. Because no one cares. And you got to figure that stuff out. And I'm not saying it's negative, but if you can tie your kid's soccer game into showing how you're a good dad, and being a good dad is important to your being a good teacher, then that's lovely. But you better have a reason why the story ties back in. And finally, you have to ask at least twice in every deck for the money. And you have to create the first ask to get a no. You have to anchor a no on something that is outside the range of what you need so you can come back and get a yes. There's a lovely TED Talk and a lovely book called Never Split the Difference. But it's very important to anchor the no. This is Ben's favorite slide, so I'm going to let him talk.
Hi, I'm Ben. I'm an engineer. Because I'm an engineer, I like solving problems. And when I solve problems, I like not just to solve them, but I like to have the right answer. And getting the right answer is one thing, but I like having it to 4 decimal places because then I know it's right and it's a really good number and I'm comfortable with it. I think most of you working in the mining industry would have heard someone or met someone or know someone like that. You may even be like that yourself. Unfortunately, it is how we're conditioned. We get fixated on this one number, and we have to make it right. But it can often take a lot of time and effort to get and energy to get that number. Benjamin and I used to work at a company, and we were waiting for an engineer to give us a number for a product. We had to go out and price it and figure out how to sell it. And this engineer, he said, "Yeah, I'll get a number. I'll get a number. It's great. I'm excited." He went away 3 weeks later, hadn't heard from him, chased him down. "Have you got the number yet?" "Oh, no, I'm almost there. I'm almost there." Another 3 weeks passed, hadn't heard from him, went back. And this repeated itself for about 4 or 5 months. We eventually cornered him in the sushi restaurant in Tucson, as you do. And he finally spat out a number. So we were very excited. We were eagerly awaiting for that number. We popped it into the model, and guess what? There was no way in the world this product was ever going to be sold to anyone because it just didn't work financially. And we'd wasted 6 months waiting for this number to be perfect, only to tell us it was a failure. What we'd rather see is goalposting. If that engineer could have given us a reasonable range for that number, and he probably could have given us a range, we could have tested it and said, "Yeah, that's great. Can you get the range a bit tighter?" Tested it again, and if it works again, great. And keep doing that till you get to that final number. The beauty of that is when you actually set that range and it doesn't work, throw it out. You've freed up time. You've killed it off. You've killed off a bad idea, and you can go focus your limited energy on something that may succeed. And that's why we're a big fan of goalposting. Don't strive for perfection. Start with some limits. Start with some sensible limits. Test it. If it works, pull it in. Do it again and again and again. You might find the final answer doing that, great. But you might see a lot of bad answers that you throw out, wasting minimal time. And that's what we're trying to achieve.
Now, when we talk about goalposting from a pitch perspective, ask for a range of money. Ask for a range of outcomes. Don't anchor on any $4.25 million to buy a perfect piece of equipment that's going to cost exactly this, and there'll be no over or no under. Give yourself a bit of wiggle room. It's a lot more plausible. Now, don't give so much wiggle room that it looks like you don't know what you're doing. But keep in mind that if you're looking at an early stage and you give precise numbers, people will not believe you, because belief requires numeric understanding. So I'm going to flip this on. Hi, I'm Benjamin. The current status quo is you have the choice of getting a standard MBA or getting an environmental economics, natural resource economics MBA or master's that's focused entirely on pricing and understanding econometrics and a whole bunch of other interesting things. There is no solid business curriculum in the mining industry, or there was none until BRIMM showed up. The current status quo was untenable, so me and Ben and Judy and Angela and a few other people in this room came together and we worked and built a course together. And the reality is the first students built it with me because it was feedback every step of the way. We would teach it once and then immediately change everything. The story was rough. We had some classes where we had 2 people in the room. We had all sorts of things that go wrong. But the reality was we kept on building and working that through. Now we need the money so we can reliably educate the next level of middle management, because we've lost 2 generations of middle management with the way the industry is going. And to make the energy transition happen, we need another 5 or 10,000 leaders. And the easiest way to get a leader is to train them, because mistakes are expensive when we need copper and other things to happen. So we want $1 million a year. We want to secure $1 million a year so we can train between 300 and 500 people a year, because we can change lives. The problem is we can't do it for free, because unfortunately, We're in a university. We need to get paid, or our kids don't eat. So let's figure this out, how to do this together. Do you see how I told the gap and the future and then the golden future? This is the same thing that Martin Luther King uses, that Steve Jobs uses, that anyone who sells uses. Where are you? How did you get here? Where are you going? How are you coming back down? And how are they going to help?
Yeah, we're using a real world example. We're not just teaching this stuff. This is stuff we actually take and use on a daily basis. My job, a large chunk of it's looking after a technical sales team. This is stuff they need to do all day. Benjamin goes out and gets money for this program and various other projects he works on. What we're teaching is stuff that actually does work. And we're using it. We're not just talking about it from an academic perspective.
Bye-bye. So there are 3 perspectives for every decision. Hi, I'm Benjamin. I used to be all about the numbers, and now I'm all about the emotions. Ben, who are you?
Hi, I'm Ben. I'm an engineer, and I'm a reformed engineer, and I also appreciate that engineers, despite all our training in logic and numbers and stuff, are very emotional people. And I do like hugs. An example of an engineer being emotional is every mining engineer has a preference, either for the orange truck or the yellow truck. They're both really good pieces of equipment and both been proven all over the world. But I guarantee you there is an emotional reason why every single engineer prefers one over the other.
Every time you write any pitch, you have to make a number, you have to tell a story, and you have to explain how it's emotionally going to resound with the person with the checkbook. Not with you. Oh, I love teaching, it feeds me. That's an emotional thing about me. Judy, I love how much what you do fundamentally means that we have a 47% gender diversity. The fact that you maintain a strong connection between BRIMM and WIM globally means that we get to have the most gender diversity of any educational program in the mining industry times 3. Did that feed me or did that feed Judy? Do you see the distinction? When you are tying emotions, it has to be about the other person. It has to be a thank you. It has to be a call to service leadership. So the quantifiable is a number about you in the program or what you're doing. The qualifiable is a story. It can be a story about me. I was reading How to Be an Anti-Racist, and I decided I was going to change how scholarships were run in this program. And then I talked to Judy, and Judy filled in the missing piece. You see how that works? Qualifiable can be about me, but the emotional is 100% about who you are selling to, not who you're buying from.
And I'd also say most people, in my experience, aren't just one. There's usually a stronger one, but most people cover at least 2 of these. I think personally, Benjamin can correct me, I'm a qualifiable emotional. I can do quantifiable, but the emotional and the qualifiable are my preferred languages.
So, what is your core problem? Hi, I want to solve a problem. The pumps are not working. The education system isn't working. Pablo's internet breaks down way too often. What's the language of that problem? Is it quantifiable? Is it qualifiable? Is it working that through? Where did the problem come from? We made the decision we were going to hire people who were not inside Canada to run our back office for this program because global reach was more important to us than local reach. It was more important that we talk to the world than we talked to UBC, which, by the way, has cost us. We don't have the support from UBC that a lot of people do. The origin story of that is Judy. She and Angela and other people early on showed us that we had to be able to talk to everyone versus necessarily stay inside the ivory bubble. Our solution? We went through a lot of TAs, a lot of program managers, a lot of people to try to build this out until Pablo showed up one day. And Pablo made it work. Now, we need the money because we need to keep Pablo paid. Because with Pablo working on this, he's managed to make the back office work. Yes, it's not perfect. Yes, we've got problems with some students. Yes, things take longer, but we've got better technical support for the size of a program than anyone could humanly imagine. We are getting almost a 50% graduation rate And the next best online program is 12%. So give us the money. Do you see how I tied that in? I created a story, I gave a language the problem, and then I immediately went back to money. Give me money. Because you're always asking for it, but you have to explain why. Anyone add there on the pitch thesis, Ben?
Yeah, I do. I want to go back to the title of this slide. It is so obvious. It sounds so obvious. But I know for myself, and I'm sure all of you have seen hundreds of presentations, that the person hasn't taken 5 minutes to sit down, think about their thesis, think about how it all ties together, and present it that way. It's very common in our industry. And just by doing that one simple thing makes it so much more coherent. Being more coherent, being better understood, being better received, improves the chance of getting the positive outcome immeasurably. Flipper?
So I just gave you more stories. There was a problem, there was a resolution. It created a new problem, which money is going to solve. They don't want to hear about this first one. This first part, this first set of information, I'm going to see if I can get the annotation working out, is history. This is the history. This is where we are. This is why we need the money. It's important to be able to tell this part of the story, be here looking for money for resolution. Do you see how that works? But you have to show that you've already been capable of solving problems, which create new problems, which is why you need to make it resolution. If you're raising money from here, you better have had a previous story arc to show your perspective. Do you see how that works? So you have to start with this is why we've gotten this far. This is how we make this work. Now we're going to get to the numbers. I don't care what type of bet you are making, whether it be a car, a new work truck, a new flotation cell, better documentation along from Angela, better relationship with women in mining from Judy, better support from Pablo. I don't know. There's lots of people in this room. Karen, with what Karen does, everyone in this room is selling. Cameron's selling equipment. Everyone here is selling something. There's a pre-money valuation. This flotation tank is going to cost $500,000. This flotation tank is going to generate another $100 million of revenue over the next 6 years. Marginal that weren't there before. So the post-money valuation is the quantifiable win, Ken. So Ken, you've got a flotation tank you're selling. It's costing $700,000 with a $3 million install. It's $3.7 million. But you know, because of this tank, that another 6,000 marginal tons of copper will be recovered over the next 6 years, or 1,000 tons a year. The post-money valuation is the present value of that marginal copper. The odds of hitting is, what are the odds that this new tank will be able to do that? There's an expected return, which can be measured in days payback. In flotation equipment, it's about 120 days on average. It can be IRR, it can be NPV. And then what is the residual value? Is it emotional? Is it physical? Is it quantitative? What is going to be left behind when you are done? One of the things that I can talk about residual value, I want to flip this. Let's flip this to ask for a new car. Hi, I'm Benjamin. I need to drive to work every morning to my spouse. A new car is going to cost $35,000. I missed 6 days of work last year because the car broke down. I make $500 a day. The previous car cost me about $3,000 in lost wages last year, and it increased the risk of me getting fired by about 30%. So I've got a $100,000 job on the line. The odds of the new car having the same problems the next 5 years is pretty close to zero. The expected return is the reduction in time, the reduction in energy, and I'm going to be far nicer when I come home because I'll be more comfortable and less stressed. And the residual value is when our kids are older, they can have the new car for their car for driving. See how I flip that into another car story? Do you also want to flip that to, Ben?
Qualitative and emotional. And you hit all those things throughout the story. You bounce between them a few times.
But you can do that whether it be a car, a grant, a piece of equipment, or a capital investment. Always quantify. So What makes you unique? We are all unique for some reason or another. Okay? Highlight that. Now, you should have a team slide. You should never talk to it. You should be talking about yourself and your team through the entire process. How much empathy have I built with Angela and Judy and Pablo because our cameras are on? Do you all feel you know those three people? Do you see how I don't need to talk about them now? You want to bring the team slide in to anchor, and this is to find out if there's a no about people. The reason to have the team slide is not to get a yes. It's to make sure that there's not a gap from the perspective of the money. Is there something we're missing that would make us unbankable? Imagine asking that question. Hi, what are we missing so we can't, how do we need to change our team so you can get money? Oh, you want us to find out that we've got someone with alternate pronouns who is different, who's whatever? We forgot to tell you about Sophia. Or we forgot to tell you about our women in mining, or we forgot to tell you about this or that or something else. What do you need to make that work? Always ask the team perspective from what do you think we're missing on our team? Let them suggest changes. Because guess what? If they think you're missing something and they tell you, there's a good chance they're right.
That's an absolute gift.
Yeah.
In fairness, a lot of times you ask that question and they won't answer you.
That's fine.
That's the worst case outcome of asking it. And if they do answer you, wow. You can remodel and reattack.
So,
yeah,
let's
exactly.
talk about
love this picture.
I love this. Hi, I used to be the bull in the china shop. Anyone who knew me before 2018 would not imagine I'd be teaching emotional intelligence sales classes. I was presented 6%, buy it. Don't you understand? When I tell you that before 2018, I would roll into a room and get everyone angry and then leave, you would not believe me today. But that's what I used to do. And then my life changed. I had a period where everything went wrong. My company blew up on me that I owned a good chunk of. I had a concussion. I now wear blue light filter glasses. My wife figured out she was a lesbian, which was fine. That's life. I didn't have a t-shirt. And my mom got diagnosed with terminal cancer and died 70 days after that. So I had a period of about 6 months where my life changed. And I went from being a tank to realizing that I had only two choices. One was I could drink, or two was I could grow up. I chose to grow up because let's face it, drinking can always come later. I could always make the decision to revert to drinking, but I figured growing was the first good stop because I knew that once I started drinking, I wasn't going to stop. And the world did not need another sad, bald, white guy drunk. We got enough of those. Go to the bar on Saturday night. You see how I tied that story to the picture? When you're trying to sell something, new flotation cells, show the duct tape on the old ones. When you're trying to sell something, make sure your pictures tie to the story. Because if you can't anchor it, no one will buy, because people buy 10,000 words in a single image. Every part of that picture sells who I used to be. Now, let's talk about the bad stuff. Things go wrong. Okay? Things go wrong. I don't care what project you're on, it's going to come in over budget, late, with problems, and there's going to be at least 3 more hero's journeys between getting the money and solving the problem. So you can either anchor by saying, hey, we're going to have things that go wrong. Here's our margin of error. You could anchor by saying, here, we've had things go wrong in the past. Here's how we've dealt with them. We understand that from day 1 to day 2, we will be pivoting because of this and this and this risk. And we understand what these risks are. And we figured this out. But you better be, take the risk. You better be prepared to talk about issues that are going to go wrong. If you tell me you're going to turn a plant on March 15th of 2025, today, what are the odds I'm going to believe you? What are you going to hit March 15th?
But a lot of people would, surprisingly.
I don't know that you will. You might hit June, you might hit September, you might hit February, but hitting exactly one day, unlikely.
It's like
So
hitting the exact MPV.
Yeah. So anchor the range, talk about risk. Now, you can use a slide for this. You can use a risk management slide. You can say, hey, what do you think our problems are? And you could use this to ask them for a free consulting. As Angela said, this is the best free consulting slide ever. Hey, you've invested in these things before. What's gone wrong for you? Can we help you with that? It takes a lot of confidence to admit that things are going wrong. Now, if they look at you and say, we've never had a problem before, walk away. Any money that is 100% sure that they've never made a mistake is not money you can trust. Because you know why you don't want money that has never made a mistake? When they make a mistake and you're on the line, guess who they're going to blame? You. So any money that says they've never made a mistake, by definition, has probably made a lot of mistakes. They've just taken credit for none of them. And that means it's very dangerous money because it's going to bite you. It's going to turn into a viper. So be very careful. If someone cannot admit that they've ever made a mistake, you do not need a business with them. You're going to find way easier places to make money.
And before you use this information in a slide deck, think it through, map it out. Hence, best case, worst case methodology we've stolen shamelessly from our mate Ben. And we talk about that in class for those who haven't been. For those who have been, they know what it is. Do your homework before you build the slide. Don't build the slide and do your homework after.
Yeah. I use a lovely tablet, which is not sitting at my desk because I've been running around trying to find plumbing parts, and I do everything on the tablet before I start writing because I know I'm not going to get it right. Cool. We have dumped a lot of information here. Don't worry, there'll be a recording, which we'll share with you. So now you got to exit. You got to qualify it. How do you quantify and qualify the way out? What is the material outcome? For BRIMM, we are going to educate the new generation of business leaders in the mining business. We believe that by giving people 35 to 70 hours or 80 hours of solid business education, we can change entire industries. We believe that by attaching your name to our education, you fundamentally can get a massive social return on investment that you cannot replicate anywhere else in the world. And more importantly, you can have educated counterparties, stakeholders, and employees to work with around the business that you're in versus fundamental NIMBYism and people who are just going to be oppositional. Because whether we educate a local government official or we educate a local opposition or an environmentalist or anyone else, the more education you get, the less likely you are not to have empathy. That's how we value that. If we're talking about a resource statement, it's going to be huge. It's going to be 6 million ounces of gold, and Ken's going to be able to sell it to a Nico Eagle for $1 trillion because it's worth $2,000 per ounce in the ground. I made those numbers up. That's not realistic. I made, silver credits. Don't ever underestimate
yes.
Silver and the cobalt credits. It's going to be a gold deposit with cobalt silver credits and tin. I've been using a lot of solder recently, so there's a lot of tin involved. Do you see how that works? I am going to use a price per ton, price per ounce, an NPV, an IRR. I'm going to talk about the shift in commodity price. How do you quantify and value the way out? Because there has to be a value. We can educate for about $3,000 US per student a real business education. For the price that you give us, you can send, for sending us 30 students, you can send one person to an MBA. Which one's going to give better shift to your organization? That one MBA or 30 people who have better business sense? Car. If I drive this car for the next 5 years and get to work on time regularly, we're going to have $25,000 of more secure income, and I'll be able to take more overtime because I won't be worried about it not turning on at midnight. I can sell earnings. No matter what you are selling, you can sell it.